Welcome back, nerds. It seems once again you've arrived just in time for the unveiling of my latest diabolical plan. Now, where did I place that nuclear fuel? Despite the theatrics of my villainous counterpart, today we will not be building a nuclear doomsday device. However, we will be building a nuclear fusion reactor. Specifically, we're making a device called a Farnsworth-Hirsch Fusor, which is one of the earliest examples of a nuclear fusion reactor that was originally developed in the 1960s by a man named Farnsworth. Now, if that name sounds familiar, it's probably because he's not only known as the inventor of the television, but he was also the inspiration for the character of Professor Farnsworth in the TV show Futurama.
Doomsday device? Now the ball's in Farnsworth's court.
Now, the nuclear fusor works on a principle known as inertial electrostatic confinement, which sounds a whole lot more complicated than it really is. Essentially, the fusor is constructed by making a vacuum chamber containing two conductive grids, one on the outer perimeter and a second spherical grid in the center of the chamber. The inner grid is conducted to a negative high voltage power source, and the outer grid is connected to earth ground. When subjected to extremely high levels of vacuum, the few air molecules that remain in the chamber can travel at much higher speeds, since they won't constantly collide with other molecules. When the negative current is applied to the inner grid, it creates a voltage potential between the two grids, resulting in a beautiful ball of negatively charged plasma in the center of the chamber. At this point, if the conditions are right, a fuel such as deuterium, which is just a heavy form of hydrogen, can be added to the chamber. In the presence of the electrical field, electrons are ripped off the deuterium molecules, leaving them positively charged. The positive deuterium ions are then drawn towards the center of the negatively charged inner grid at a speed that's dependent upon the voltage that's applied. If the ions are pulled into one another fast enough and collide, nuclear fusion can occur, generating various products, most commonly helium-3 and a high-energy neutron. There are various ways to make a fusor depending on your budget and your end goal. However, no matter your goal, the most important parts needed for a fusor are a high-quality vacuum pump and a chamber that is able to withstand the vacuum. Now, you will need a vacuum pump that's capable of achieving a vacuum of at least 50 microns or less. The least expensive option here is usually going to be a dual-stage rotary vane pump, kind of like this one, but higher quality systems will often implement multiple vacuum pumps to obtain an even stronger vacuum. Now, for my vacuum chamber, I decided to use a 316 stainless inline sight glass that I came across. Now, these are typically used in pharmaceutical and food processing applications, but I thought that the sanitary fitting with the grooved silicone gaskets could make obtaining a good vacuum a little bit easier. There are several options out there for power supplies, but one relatively common source is a neon sign transformer, which is what I decided to use. The one I purchased is rated for 12,000 volts at 30 milliamps. However, since a fusor requires a DC current and the output of the transformer is in AC, I do have to build a rectifier to convert the AC back into DC, so I picked up a pack of high voltage diodes to do this. And because I want it to be pretty, I picked up some acrylic sheets and rods, and I'm going to use that for my stand. Now, a bit of a disclaimer, the fusor that I'm building today will technically be considered a demo fusor, and at least for now, I'm not going to be performing any fusion experiments.
Go, bitch!
This is because in order to safely achieve fusion and prove that I did so, you need a way of detecting neutron radiation, as well as some additional shielding to protect yourself and others from any potential X-rays, gamma rays, or any other dangerous products that are generated. While it is possible to get all of these materials, doing so gets expensive real quick. So, at least for now, this will be a demo version, but it should be pretty sweet nonetheless. Wait a second, do you guys hear that? Sounds to me like it's time for a montage. Alright, so here it is, my very own fusion reactor. Now, it did take me a couple tries to get to this point, and as anyone who's ever built a fusor can tell you, saying that they're finicky is a huge understatement. If you plan on building one, prepare to spend lots of time chasing down vacuum leaks and outgassing materials. Now, no system is perfect, and this one even still has a small vacuum leak that I haven't been able to find yet, but it still holds fairly well. Now, one piece of advice I will give is invest in a good pack of JB Weld for any parts that won't need to be disassembled later. It's great for plugging vacuum leaks and it doesn't outgas. I also redesigned the inner grid a few different times, trying different wire thicknesses and grid styles and sizes, but for the size of my chamber I opted to go with a thinner gauge stainless steel wire and went with the swirled design instead of the interconnected circle design that you do see in a lot of fusors. But, you know what? Enough talking. Let's turn down the lights and let this baby glow. Well, that's about it for today, nerds. Now, if you want to learn more about fusors, build your own, or even just see some really cool builds that others have made, including some used for legitimate fusion experiments, check out Fusor.net. It's an amazing resource for all things fusor related, and is home to a community of super smart and helpful people who've dedicated countless hours to researching fusors and nuclear fusion. And as always, if you've enjoyed the video, giving me a like and subscribe is greatly appreciated and does a lot to help the channel out. I've also started offering official Neutrino Tech merch that can be found at my website, neutrinotech.com. Got all sorts of cool stuff there, anything from backpacks to t-shirts and hoodies and you name it. But thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time here on Neutrino Tech.